Good afternoon, my conscious co-creators. Welcome to another edition of the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. I am very, very pleased that you are all here with me today. We've got a wonderful guest in store for you today. Someone I'm truly looking forward to bringing on the show in just a moment. But first, of course, we have our blog post from a couple of years ago. And this one is entitled, I don't know, this is kind of a different one. The greatest mystery of life is what happens when it's over. The unknown is often scary. It is normal to fear what we do not know. Sometimes that fear stops us from exploring and keeps us from enjoying the treasures of life. For we cannot know everything that will happen in our life. There is so much in this universe that is beyond our comprehension. And the biggest mystery of all is, where do we go when we die? We rarely talk about death in polite company. It is a topic that is shunned in our general conversations, unless there is some gruesome accident or horrible tragedy. Even then, we do not talk about it in a personal way, like it is something that only happens to others. Yet the mystery of our own mortality is one of the most important events we can contemplate. And in contemplating our own demise, we can come to great insight and peace. Though it is much more common to find that we push it away and do not think about it until we become ill or deteriorate physically. Then we only face it with fear and trepidation. When we do that, we deny ourselves one of the greatest opportunities that life offers us. For mysteries can be fascinating and thrilling. Death is no different. In fact, it is the greatest mystery of all. So why do we face it with fear instead of curiosity? Could we not shift our trepidation into gratitude? Gratitude that we get to participate in the greatest adventure of our lives? Of course, when our demise comes at a young age, it can feel like a tragedy. When we see so much unfulfilled promise and potential. Still, in our own lives, we know how much we have experienced and learned over the years. And when we are at peace in our lives, we can approach death in a peaceful way as well. Perhaps not all the time. Even feeling that way some of the time is a great accomplishment, maybe the greatest of our lifetime. Death may be an ending, and it is also a beginning of what comes next, of what awaits us on the other side of life. No one knows for certain what that will be like. Why not prepare ourselves for that eventuality with grace? For a life well lived is the best way to face the end of that life. And curiosity for what comes next instead of fear is far more empowering. Have you contemplated your own death? Can you make peace with your life so you can be at peace with your death as well? So I wrote this blog post a couple of years ago in June. It was after I came back from the Psychedelic Sciences Conference in Denver. And I wrote it because at that conference, Roland Griffith, who was the head of the Johns Hopkins Center for Psychedelic Research, talked about how he had stage 4 colon cancer. And he talked about it with such grace, such poise, even talking about how, knowing that his end was near, he was so much more grateful for every moment he had left to live. He brought the entire audience of thousands of people to tears. I have never seen anyone in my life talk about their own death with such reverence, with such grace. I just don't know another word to use. And it truly touched me. It touched me because I know I could not do that today. If I found out I had some terminal illness and I had 6 months to live or something, well, first of all, I would do everything not to make it only 6 months, but I just don't feel I could have approached that same kind of situation with the grace and poise and openness that he displayed that day on that stage. And he passed away last year. And you know, I didn't I knew of him. I didn't know him. I didn't have a personal relationship with him. But just listening to him talk that day at the conference just touched my heart in such a deep way that when I came back, this is what came out of me. This is what I wrote. And it's interesting how over the last few years, more and more people I meet are death doulas or friends who are studying how to be a death doula, and how approaching death, talking about death, preparing for death instead of just waiting, allowing it to happen and ignoring it till the last minute. I hear about it in conversations with people a little bit more. And I do realize, and I've had on several guests who've written books on the inner work of aging and the how to approach aging from a spiritual perspective. And I guess maybe just because I'm getting older, I want to talk about these topics more. But I feel like we all need to talk about this topic more for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is learning how to approach this greatest mystery of life with something other than fear and anger and sadness. That there has to be a better way of dealing with this eventuality that we will all face, one way or another. So, that's my blog post. Again, the title is "The Greatest Mystery of Life is What Happens When It Is Over." And you can always find my blog at my personally branded website, theconsciousconsultant.com. And if you like my blog post, you know that I do have my book, Everyday Awakening. You Are More Powerful Than You Know. That's a wonderful collection of many blog posts. And of course, you can always find it at the station's website, talkradio.nyc/blog. And now it is my extreme pleasure to welcome to the show internationally known astrologer, author, columnist, entrepreneur, publisher, and pioneer of the internet, Susan Miller. Susan is the founder and editor of astrologyzone.com, created in 1995. Her site is considered an authority in the field of Western astrology and is read avidly by over 13 million readers. Susan's warm, compassionate, philosophical style, as well as her accurate, comprehensive, and insightful reporting of current planetary trends, has made Susan a true astrology star. Not only that, she's written over 17 books. She comes out with a calendar every year. She is truly amazing. Welcome to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Susan.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be on your show.
Oh, I've been looking forward to having you come on for months now. I'm really glad that it worked today. So thank you for taking time to come on. So I always like to start off with like, understanding the journey a little bit. So I mean, were you always into astrology from the time
No,
you were
no,
little?
I didn't want anyone to know I knew astrology. I wanted to learn it, but I have a very unusual background. I
Hmm.
was born with a terrible birth defect, life-threatening,
Ah.
and the doctors couldn't figure out what it was because the MRIs weren't as good as they are now. And I mean, the equipment was just not where we have it now. We're very lucky.
Right.
And in those days, when I was little, if they couldn't figure it out, there was something wrong with you mentally, that you were making it up or
Ah.
didn't want to go to school or whatever. I would get a text every year, usually on a holiday, usually
Huh?
on Christmas, Easter, my birthday, one of them. And I would be in bed for 8 weeks. I couldn't move an inch
Oof.
in the bed. I couldn't get up out of the bed. And I'd be in really bad pain. My mother would change the sheets with me in the bed very gingerly and pull
Hmm.
the one sheet out the way they do in the hospital. And she felt so bad that I had this mysterious illness, and she was determined to figure it out. She was an astrologer, a scholar, but never
Um,
did consultations because she felt it wasn't accepted. So she just studied and studied and studied and only did charts for the family.
ah.
She was brilliant. And when I was 14, I went into the hospital and had the mystery solved.
Hmm.
And it was my veins on the left side are like tissue paper that at some point rupture and disappear.
Hmm.
And I would become a river of blood inside. When you bleed internally, even a teaspoon,
Hmm.
very painful. And I've had in my life, the whole span of life, 40 blood transfusions. I mean, that year that they went in, I was in for 11 months
Oof.
and a lot of surgeries. And I had to be paralyzed from the knee down. Um, they saw I was bleeding out and I was going to either lose the leg or lose my life. And they had a team of
Wow.
doctors come in. I had the chief of staff, and he had he said, we brought in the other doctors. And I said, wait a minute, their names are on all the buildings in the neighborhood. He said, we had the best for you, Susan. And they tourniqueted me so tightly, they knew it would damage the nerve. And when I woke up from the surgery, you know how they put a little fork on you and
Uh-huh.
can you feel it? Can you wiggle your toes? I'll try, but I couldn't. But I wasn't angry. I wasn't angry at my doctor. I wasn't sad. I said to myself, this is my destiny. It
Hmm.
was the way it was supposed to go. I'm just happy to be here.
Hmm.
But I was really, really sick.
Wow.
I mean, it was touch and go. But I did leave the hospital after 11 months. And then I went into 2.5 years of intense physical therapy to bring
Hmm.
the leg back. So if you saw me then walking down the
Hmm.
street, you'd say, oh, you're making all this up. But no, they they put electrodes on so I wouldn't look like a polio leg. You know, they had to keep the muscle. So
Yeah.
that's why no one when I get tired, I limp a little bit, but
Hmm.
so slightly, and I can't wear heels. And
Gotcha.
every girl likes to wear heels.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
can't anymore. I did for a while, but the bones are
Hmm.
moving in the foot. And, when you don't, when it's not strong, I mean,
Yeah.
you can't have the bones moving in the foot and wear heels. It's
Right,
like
right, right.
wearing stilts. That's terrible. So during that process, after the operation, I really wanted to learn astrology. So I kept asking my mother to teach me. And she kept
Hmm.
saying, no, 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 no. And I'm like, why? And she said, you'll study for a year and you'll read for your friends and think you know what you're doing. I said, but wait, I don't have any friends. I'm not in school. And I was okay with that. People go, oh, you didn't have any friends. I was okay. I was a kid who liked to read, or I could make myself happy, while I was getting well. And of course, I had to teach myself high school. The Board of Ed did bring a teacher twice a week for 1 hour to my house. So I changed it from math and English to 2 hours of math, because teaching yourself trigonometry and things like that, because I would have to take the Regents test, the PSATs, and the
Right, right.
SATs. I was going to college. I had to graduate high school. So I was so busy studying. But she said, no, you have to study 12 years or you won't be any good. I said, okay, I will. I love you. I'll do whatever you say. And she didn't believe I was serious.
Mm.
And I finally wrote to Horoscope Magazine, and they have a section. She got it. She subscribed to it. It was always in the house. And I saw in the one part of it that they did a chart that, you'd write in, tell them your question. They wouldn't use your name, but they would use your birthday and time of birth and so forth. And they would do your chart and answer your question. So
Mm.
I wrote to them, but I didn't hear anything. So one day, my mother walks into the living room and I'm working on my homework. And she said, did you write to Horoscope Magazine? I said, I did. How do you know? That was 7 months ago. And I never got a response. But
Mm.
I think you're in the latest issue. This is your birthday and this is your
Uh,
problem. And you have a very rare problem. So it has to be you. So I said, okay, well, what did the lady say, the editor in chief? She said, I didn't read it yet. Let's read it together. When you ask an astrologer any question,
mhm.
they have to be like a detective. Look
Right,
at the whole chart.
right.
Good family support, lives in a big city, access to facilities, good attitude of the patient. What are the aspects to health?
Mhm,
How,
mhm.
does it show long recovery? All kinds of things. So she read it to me. And at the end, the editor in chief said, we think you'll walk again. And I said,
Um,
now, Mama, she used words I don't understand: sextile, opposition. I want you to teach me astrology so I could figure that out. She
mm.
said, but you have your answer. And then I went like this. And she said, you want to check the editor in chief? I said, of course. So that's when she gave in.
Okay.
She
Well, okay,
taught me.
let's hold it there because we got to take a break. And so when we come back, let's talk about, well, how did you go from just knowing astrology to being a professional astrologer and achieving all the amazing things you've achieved? Okay, Susan?
Okay.
All right. So everyone, please stay tuned. You're listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. We do this every Thursday, 12 noon to 1 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on talkradio.nyc. And we'll be right back with our guest, Susan Miller of astrologyzone.com, in just a moment. Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Broncu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. We're speaking this hour with Susan Miller, a world-class, internationally known astrologer. So, how did you go from this girl who pestered her mom about teaching her astrology to being someone who decided I'm going to do this for a living?
It, there's a saying in astrology, you don't choose astrology, astrology chooses you.
Hmm.
And that's what happened. After that ordeal, I was admitted at 16, because I had graduated at 16, high school, to NYU. And my father said, you better major in business because you'll always work if you do. And I thought, well, the last thing I need is to be unemployed all the time. So, okay, I'll major in business. And NYU was near the hospital, and I would have to go occasionally for treatments. So it worked out. And I graduated with honors, and I went into publishing. And I worked for magazines. My first job was Life magazine, and then 17 and Cosmopolitan, different ones, working in the business side of the magazine.
Mm-hmm.
But at 17, I was really intrigued with the photographer down the hall who would take a product and photograph it for the small business. And then we would run ads for them. We had a little area, for little businesses. They made hats, they made different things, and I kept watching him work, and I loved it so much. I remember his name was Herbie, and I would stay late. He would stay late. I'd be done at 5 o'clock, so I'd walk down the hall and say, "Well, I'm here. I'm going to watch you shoot." And I learned a lot of technical. And I finally became an agent for commercial photographers. I couldn't lift the equipment myself with my leg. So, but I found out I just needed to be near it and explain it. And my technical allowed me to explain it. I became super successful. Especially in still life photography. I cracked Coca-Cola for the world, but I also had car clients, Mercedes-Benz, Audi, BMW, all of the big ones. And I don't know how to drive. And my children are saying, well, this car has a symbol that looks like the peace symbol, Mom. I'm like trying to keep them all straight. But I was, again, really successful because I had a good eye. And I would, in those days, there was no internet really cooking yet. So I would visit art directors. It was a very warm and wonderful kind of industry. And I sort of got the reputation that if you have a bad situation going on, you broke up with your boyfriend, your landlord sold the building, you have to move, whatever it was, your mom's in the hospital, call 911 and Susan will answer and she'll come right down and see you. And it was true. And I was practicing my astrology, but never asking to be paid, just doing lots and lots and lots of charts. The whole industry knew it. And I was accurate because I had, my mother comes from the German side of my family.
Yes.
We have to be accurate. And also, my mother stressed, get feedback, find out what happened. So I'd say, you've got to call me. You have to, come on, that's the deal. You have to tell me what happens. And this went on for quite a long time. And one day we shot Cheerios. And you wake up one morning and you don't know this is going to be the day that changes your life. We shot Cheerios. It came out great. It was for the box on 8x10 camera, and the milk is splashing. The Cheerios are dancing in the air. It was for Saatchi and Saatchi. And I was so grateful. I'm always grateful when I get a big account. So I took the creative director to lunch in a beautiful restaurant to thank him. And I said, I had told him, I'll do your chart if you like. And creative people live their life creatively. They want to see how to push back the boundaries of their life and live a more richer experience, and try different things. So that industry loves astrology, creatives. Yeah. So I read his chart and he said, oh, my wife would love you. And I remember saying, I would love her. What does she do? He said, she's creative director of Warner Books in the same building where I used to work at Life. And so I went up to meet Jackie Meyer.
Mhm.
and we are to become best friends. We hit it off
Mhm.
so well. And she would give me books. She would show me galleys. She would show me books in development because she was the creative director of Warner
Mhm.
Books.
Right, right.
And we'd go across the street to China Grill and have lunch once in a while. And I would read her chart about every 6 months. And she said, I have a feeling about you. I'm going to get you a book. Well, it took a couple of years. And one
Wow.
day I wrote this little baby book, sold out. She calls me back. You're going upstairs to the webmaster. I said, wait a minute. What of Time Incorporated? She said, yes, of Pathfinder. It was Pathfinder before AOL.
All right,
She
right.
said, what do they want? She said, I don't know. And you know what? I don't think they know. You come with your ideas too. I said, okay.
Mm.
And I knew this is what my mother had predicted, although at the time, when I was 9 years old, I asked my mother what I would do when I grew up. And she said, you're going to write. I said, write? No one in our family writes for a living. She said, you're going to write and I'm going to work on your grammar. And she did. She was a Gemini. And so she said, but this isn't going to happen until you're about 37 or so, later, you're going to write.
Hmm.
And I needed more surgeries. So I began writing for magazines while I was going. I would always have long recoveries, like 6 months, 7 months,
Mm.
8 months. So I needed a way to bring in money. So I started writing for magazines. I would show them my work, and somehow they liked my style. And I was first writing for bridal magazines and then for McCall's magazine, which
Mhm.
was a Bible Belt magazine. And they wanted me anyway, and I'm very optimistic, despite everything I've been through. That's the way you're either born optimistic or you're not. And I am. My
Right,
mother's that
right.
way. And it, it just, when I went up to Time Warner, they wanted me to write for women. I said,
Mm.
women, men want to know what's coming. Why would we just write to women? Well, they said, well, I said, in ancient days in Mesopotamia, the only person who had the ability to have an astrologer was the king. He had to have the mathematician in a nearby university come on horseback to the castle, and it had to be close enough so he could get back and teach the next day. They're like,
Mm.
oh, well, I guess we should include men. I said I should write in such a way that is non-gender specific. So
Right.
they're like, okay, but I said, what were you thinking? They said every day 25 words. I said, no, 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 no. That will eat me up alive. No, I can't. I want to change the world, and I can't change the world at
Mm.
25 words per day per sign. I want to write a monthly, and I want it to be long. They said long. They say 500 words should be the maximum. I said that's good for other people. Not for me. No, no, it should be long. At the
Wow.
time, they said, how long per sign? I said 1,700 words. I'm writing this month for June. I wrote 4,000 words for a lot of the signs. Some are 3,500. Altogether, I wrote 41,000 words for all 12 signs. You could divide.
Wow. Wow.
I write long, but see, in astrology, if you don't explain something clearly enough, it's
Right.
confusing and misleading. And
Yes.
on the internet, I have the room.
Right.
I've
Right.
often said to myself, if I had to pay someone to do what I do, I couldn't
Right.
afford them. But they said, look, wait, wait, wait. Why would you do this? I said, well, when I was 9 years old, I asked my mother, what will I write? What will I do with this writing? She said, when you reach close to 40, 37, 38, 39, 40, some newly invented form of communication, so new we don't know the name of it yet, will change the way you work and be the channel in which you make your ultimate contribution to the world. I was like,
Mm.
whoa, how can you know that by looking at that piece of paper? She said, Susan,
Yeah.
you have Aquarius on the midheaven. That's the
Ah.
highest point where the 12 is on the clock. She said, that's the newly invented form. I said, tell me more, tell me more. Well,
Okay.
it plugs in the wall.
Let's hold it there for a moment. I apologize. We got to take another break. So when we come back, you'll tell us about, you know, that
How
this.
she defined it.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Wonderful. So everyone, please stay tuned. You're listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour. We're talking to Susan Miller, author of astrologyzone.com and creator of this wonderful calendar, The Year Ahead, 2025. Oops, try to get them. There you go. Very beautiful. And we'll be right back to keep up going the conversation. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Linda Marsanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
All right, Susan. So you were saying that your mom predicted this new form of communication.
I said, well, tell me more about it. She said, Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. Uranus is electricity. It rules electricity, so it has something to do with plugging in the wall. And it's communication because all air signs, whether they're Gemini, Aquarius, or Libra, are communicative air signs. So it has to do with your ability to communicate. And I have Gemini rising. Well, I drove her crazy. I followed her around the house. You have to tell me more. You have to tell me more. And she finally said something that really zippered me shut. She said, all right, I'm going to tell you something that won't make sense. Just put it in your pocket. Remember it. It doesn't make sense to me either. There are little dots or lines that go through the air that are invisible. And it has something to do with your writing and this new invention.
Wow.
And she was predicting the internet.
Wow.
And when I was in that taxi cab, leaving my house, I live in Manhattan, going down, we went down Broadway and then turned to the Time Life building, which was still opposite Radio City Music Hall at the time. They have since moved. And I knew this is it. This is it. And when I went up there, they didn't really know what they wanted. But I told them that story. And I put my elbows on the table and went like this. Don't you see? This is my destiny. And I was dealing with Harvard, Yale, and Dartmouth, and they all looked at the man in the middle. And he thought for a minute and he said, Susan, we're not going to stand in your way. You're so passionate. We're going to let you do anything you want.
Wow.
And not every company would do that. Some companies have a not invented here mentality. If they didn't think it up, they weren't going to let you do it. But that's why I feel so bad that Time got involved with AOL and died. But I was with Time Inc. for 3 years. And then I was in crisis. Nobody was buying material. Doors were being slammed in my face. I would license the material to them. I still kept my job as an agent during the day. I had 2 children. And I needed to send them to private school because I had such a hard time with education. I was obsessed with giving them the best. So I kept working. And then they said, well, we're leaving. And with AOL, you can't be here. They will rule the internet. You have to find a happy home for your website. I remember them using those terms. And finally, I was really at the end. I had sent out 50 FedExes with beautiful, I hired a designer to make it almost look like an annual report, what I was doing, where I wanted to go. And it's so funny how God works.
Mm-hmm.
I knew the luckiest day of the year was coming up at February 23rd, which was a Saturday. And nobody was talking to me. It was about.
Was that the luckiest day of the year for you personally or for people in
Well,
general?
for everybody, because Jupiter meets with the sun. We're going to have that this month on June 24th.
Okay.
But that year, it was meeting at, on a Saturday, and it was really touching my planets. So on Planet Susan, I thought I'll fly out on Monday, meet with Microsoft on Tuesday, and have a letter of intent legally by Friday. Everything was just going to fall in place. Well, it was a train wreck. It was the worst meeting of my life. First of all, I had a cold, so I was coughing as if I was Typhoid Mary. And I get to Seattle, and they're in Bellevue. There's a dentist convention. I can't get a good hotel. I'm staying in an okay hotel, but I usually like a little nicer, because then you have the concierge to help you. It's pouring rain every day. And I go to the meeting and they want me to cut my content to 100 words per. And I can't do that. I said, I can't change my product. I can't do that. So I come back to the hotel miserable. And nothing's working. I said, let's meet tomorrow. No, they didn't want to. No, I have a budget meeting. I have a softball practice. I mean, they just had a million reasons why they couldn't meet breakfast, lunch, or dinner. So I come back to the hotel thinking, how could I be so wrong? The phone is ringing, and it's my friend who works very high up at Microsoft and wants to know how it went. And I said, terrible. And she said, who was at the meeting? Oh, Larry, he's going to be fired next week. Melissa, she's never had an interesting idea. No. You shouldn't. No. Stay away. I said, why am I hearing wishing behind you? And she said, I'm in Cupertino. I'm in the car. I said, you're in Cupertino? She said, we work with Apple. I said, oh, okay. Well, I'll see you in New York. I won't be back in time to have dinner with you. And her title was Director of Virtual Worlds and Research. She dealt with the universities.
Wow.
She reported directly to Gates, but I knew that the door was closed on this. So I hung up, and this is so interesting what happens next. I call New York and I said, okay, what's happening at the office? Anything I should know? This meeting didn't go so great. They said, you can't come home. There's going to be a big snowfall. They're closing Liberty, JFK, and LaGuardia. There's going to be 33 inches of snow. Nobody's going in or out of New York. You have to stay on the West Coast.
Wow.
I said, oh, in February, I must.
Yeah, twist my arm a little more,
okay.
Sure.
So I think, what could I do? Well, I want to leave Seattle because it's raining. And I'm thinking, Cupertino. Well, wait a minute. Apple had written a story about me called The Astrologer Who Believes in Apple, because I had called them and I said, everybody's making fun of Steve Jobs, and the PC people think he has a silly little toy, and I can help you with product introductions. I can give you the dates. He said, who are you? I said, I may be a little mouse, but I could help you. I mean, I'm tiny compared to you, but I can help. He said, you're very interesting. Do you do charts on your Mac? I said, oh, yes, all the time. He said, Steve told us to watch for people doing interesting things on the Mac. I'm putting my best writer to write a story about you. Wow. So they did. And I gave them all the dates, but they didn't print them. And I said, why didn't you print them? Well, we didn't want our competition to know our best dates. I'm like, oh, okay. Okay, very good, very good. And so when I was, in that hotel standing there thinking, I'll go down to San Francisco and see if they'll have dinner with me in a very good restaurant in San Francisco. And they did. And coming down, I made it 2 days in advance. I think it was Wednesday we were meeting. Everybody's saying, can I come? Can I come? Can I come? And Sam,
Mm,
I feel in this life, there may be 5 people other than your parents who love you unconditionally, and they don't count on the 5 people. But there
hmm
are going to be 5 people you encounter in life that really care what happens to you. And
mm.
Apple was one of them. And
Ah,
and I thought to myself, I'll pay for the 14 people for dinner. I'll figure it out. I'll put it on Visa. I'll pay it off. I want them all to come. If they want to come, I want them to come. And so I get there, and the waiter says, "Everybody's having champagne. Do you want?" Oh, sure, I want champagne, but here's my credit card. Don't let them pay. He said, "You're too late." I said, "How could that be? Not everybody's here. They paid yesterday." And I look at, and Dan Marushis is the person I had called, and he's one of the gang of 8 that brought Apple back. And he said, "Did you
Mhm.
think we were going to charge you for this?" I'm like, "You keep getting it backwards. I'm trying to help you, and you keep helping me. Oh no, we got to change this." And he was
Mm,
laughing. And at that dinner, they said, "Did you try InfoSeek?" And I said, "I can't get through the switchboard. They think I'm a headhunter." "Oh
mm.
no, all former Apple people work there." And it's a search engine. A lot of your viewers may be young and don't know InfoSeek was like
Yes,
Google.
yes, I
Do you
remember
remember it?
InfoSeek in the
Yeah.
day. Yeah.
And I went down. I don't know how to drive, as you know, but
Mhm.
there's a Caltrain that takes you there, and there's a
Mm.
taxi waiting there, for anybody who wants one. And I had an amazing meeting, and it was the Friday before the Saturday. And they
Ah,
said, "We are interested. We are interested in this." And the Walt Disney Company was to buy them 4 weeks later. So I wound up working for the Walt Disney Company for 3 years. And I learned from both big companies, from Time Warner Information Management, the way you tell someone something. When you have news for someone, the
hmm
sequence, like the
hmm
worst thing you could say to someone, "You're not going to like this." Don't say that. But and from Disney, I learned the importance of very quick communication with the customer, and
Mm.
answering a question within 48 hours. And I stayed with them another 3 years, and then I was ready to cut the cord. I was still doing the agent work for 6 years, doing
Ah,
the internet at night. And believe me, Sam, it was so hard in the beginning.
I'm
There were
sure. I'm
no
sure it's like
laws.
having two full-time businesses.
Well, not only that, I mean, there were no laws. My readers got to know my lexicon, and they said,
Uh,
"We think this lady is using your material and putting her name on it." And I said, "Nobody would do that. We'll go
ah,
over and look." And sure enough, and I had a federal trademark, and I know the whole 9 yards.
yeah.
I have a lawyer. I did everything. But after 6 years, I was on my own, hiring
Mm,
my own staff. But
mm,
when Disney couldn't, they felt that Michael Eisner said we shouldn't be in the internet business, so we're cutting all contracts after they're over. And I was one of them, and
uh,
I was working out of Sunnyvale. Once in a while I'd go there, like
mhm,
about every 3 months I would visit the team. And now I was looking into the abyss again. It was 6 years in, and
mm.
and I always pray, and I always ask God to give me a direction. I don't expect him to fix it for me. He's too busy with cancer patients and people, but just show me a clue. And
Mm,
I opened my eyes. I'm sitting in the living room. I'm looking at the end of my website, and I love it so much. And I look down at the New York Times. That's the only thing on my coffee table. I don't know why. Usually there's flowers and art books or something, but there was nothing else. And there was a headline: "Near the Fold, Stephen King making a fortune," and then turning over the paper, "in ebooks." As I could make more money than him in ebooks. So I called Warner Books. "Do you want to
ah,
do an ebook?" And they said, "No, no." It was at the birth of the ebooks. It was
mhm,
2001.
mhm,
And
mhm.
Adobe, I'll tell the truth, they put their worst people on ebooks at the time. They didn't
Ah,
anymore, but I mean, ebooks were so new, and then nobody even knew if people would like them. Of course, we do. But at the time, it was hard. And the general public you had to do things. It's not like now you go on
Mhm.
Amazon and it flies through the air and it winds up in
So
your
Susan,
inbox.
I need to interrupt you because we got to
Okay.
take our last break of the show, and I really
Okay.
want to get to your book, The Next 200 Years, and see if you can give our audience just some sense, because of all the chaos going on right now, from just an astrological perspective, what's happening and what to expect. Okay? Wonderful. So everyone, please stay tuned. You're listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, and we'll be right back to finish it all up with our guest, Susan Miller of astrologyzone.com.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Ready to serve up success with a splash? Hi, I'm Bruce Kramer, a.k.a. the Corporate Cockroach.
I'm the Renaissance woman, Angie Snowball.
And I'm your strategy doctor, Dr. Navtesh Desange, inviting you to serving up success with a splash.
Join us as we shake things up with real talk and real strategies centered around awareness, action, and accountability.
And yes, there really is a cocktail involved. Please join us and sip your way to success.
Serving up success with a splash, where wisdom meets happy hours. Cheers!
Cheers.
Cheers!
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
So, Susan, you've had an amazing career, and an amazing life in general. And you've become so well known because of your dedication to astrology and really wanting to help people. So I'm just curious, in your book, The Next 200 Years, I'm assuming you're talking about what's going to happen in the next 200 years on this
Well,
planet.
technologically, yes. Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just wondering, because a lot of people I know are very frustrated, confused, angry at the chaos and the change, and
Oh,
and life in general just is changing by the minute, by the second
it
almost.
is.
So I'm just wondering, like, what have you seen in the stars that can maybe help us a little bit in
Well,
dealing with all this?
as you know, we're coming up on our 250th anniversary of the United States next year. Quite a big
Yes.
year. We'll see the tall ships and parades, and it'll be quite a year. But astrologers were watching Pluto come back to where it was when we were born. Pluto is the horse on the outer rim, the precipice of our solar system. So he takes 248 years to go around the sun, approximately. So he has an egg-shaped kind of orbit. So it's different, each cycle. He is causing the rebellion that you feel now. And we knew it was coming and that we would be kind of fighting with each other. It will end. It will end. And it will become better. All the planets, I have to tell you, I've never seen this before, but within 7 months, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, and Jupiter will change signs, or some have already changed signs.
Right.
Jupiter's changing in June 9th, for a full year. But Pluto is staying in Aquarius, the sign of the future. And that's why we're hearing so much about AI for the next 20 years. And that until January 2044. It started last year.
Mhm.
You know, with all the planets leaving Earth signs, which are, and water, Earth is very, very stable, very
Grounded. Yeah.
traditional and patriarchal. And now Aquarius, every sign on the wheel is opposite from the sign that came before. So when we had Pluto in Capricorn, the king or the president told us what to do.
Mhm.
Aquarius is flips that, and
Mhm.
the people tell the president what they want him to do for them.
Mm.
So you will get much more of an uprising, and demonstrations, and people have to voice their feelings. It's important to do that and to
Mhm.
vote. People
Yes.
cannot say, I don't like anybody. No, 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 no. You can't. Well, in New York, you're in New York too, I think, right?
Yes.
You're not allowed to complain unless you voted.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And all right, and you learn from it too, and you're involved in the public forum. Uranus is going into Gemini, which is very communicative. It's in Taurus right now. So Taurus is Earth also.
Mhm.
And Saturn, and we're going to see real breakthroughs in aviation. But lately, aviation has been a little
Mess.
wackadoodle, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Liberty Airport and
Mhm.
everything, all the things going on. Saturn is moving into out of Pisces and into Aries, of fire sign. Neptune's moving into a fire sign. So you get more mobility, less status on what you have, because Taurus is shopping,
Mhm.
tangible things. It's and air and fire are more
Mental.
intellectual, yes. And it's what you know and what you contribute that will really matter most.
Mm.
That will be where you get your status from. And it
Mm.
doesn't matter how you get it, whether you went to college or a trade school or you just, I think Bill Gates dropped out of school and so did
Yeah.
Steve Jobs. So it
Yep.
doesn't matter that part, it didn't matter if you went to Yale or not, it's what you contribute. What's the bottom line here, and how much you care about the rest. Because I think we're all here to help each other,
Right.
because we can't possibly know everything. So we need
Right.
each other, and that's what I really learned staying in bed so much. It's hard to ask
Mm.
your mother to get your crayons when you're little, but you learn quickly you can't do it yourself.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
that the AI is both wonderful and terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, the scammers are going to go to town with it, and and they're getting better. But we need to build laws, and I think Congress has to go to school on AI. I mean, I think they have to learn more. I think we all do. I use ChatGPT to look things up, but I'm never using AI to write my columns. I have my own style, and I enjoy it. I like doing it, and I'm not going to use AI. And a lot of my competitors are, but then they start sounding alike.
Right.
So no, you
Right.
can't do it that
Yeah,
way.
no, I'm with you. I write my own blog post every week. I don't use AI for it. And yeah, I mean, it's one of my joys because I love just letting the stuff flow through me.
Are you a Gemini?
I am right on the cusp between Aquarius and Pisces. I'm 1 degree into Pisces, but I have an
Oh,
Aquarius stellium. I have like 5 planets in Aquarius.
oh, you were born that year. My mother told me someone brilliant would be born that year with so much Aquarius, and they would have their eye on the future and bring the
Mhm.
future to us. Yeah, so that you're one of those people.
Mm, mm, yeah.
So no, it's pretty exciting what's coming. There will be a change. Now, I think there's too much change in Washington right now, too
Yeah.
fast, too
Right.
furiously, and you know, um, I think that people have to have the courage to say no in
Mm,
government and stop some of this from being a racing car. We have to.
you're right.
I think that the people, a lot of people don't follow the news. I do, but
Hmm.
I think when they start seeing prices go up across the board, they'll
Yeah.
start to wait. What's happening here? It will really hit home, and it's
Yeah.
coming. It's coming within a month or two.
Yeah.
I think that's when there will be, uh, some balance put back into things.
Right.
I
Wonderful.
think so. Yeah, I think so. The United States is Cancer. It's
Mhm.
born on the 4th of July.
Right.
And Jupiter this week is going into Cancer. And it will be the luckiest time of the year, the luckiest year of their life for Cancer. And that means the United States is going into a good period. So hang on. I
Mhm.
think things will balance out. Of course, I'm the optimist.
Mm.
But I do believe that it will get better
Wonderful.
because of that. And we're going into a lot of prosperity the year after that. But I don't think these tariffs are going to work. And I think we're going to have to, you know, temper that. I mean, some
Yeah.
tariffs, but not
Right.
everybody. And
Well,
I
well,
don't like fighting with Canada
yes, I know, I know.
or
Susan,
Mexico. They're
unfortunately,
great people.
unfortunately, we're out of time. I wish I had a 3 hour program. I could definitely talk to you for 3 hours, no problem. Unfortunately, I only have an hour.
We're so special. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on. If people want to learn more about you, get in touch with you.
Yes, Susan Miller at astrologyzone.com. And read my June forecast. I think you'll like it. I write in a conversational style, not encyclopedia kind of style. It's much warmer. And and give me feedback, as my mother used to say. It's so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I
And I'm
would
on
love to
all
get
social
together.
media
I would love to
except
get
TikTok.
together sometime since you're right across the park from me.
Oh,
So
whoa, yes.
we should definitely meet up sometime.
We'll
Okay.
make that happen.
All
Thank
right,
you.
wonderful, wonderful.
Okay.
So thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. I really appreciate you, Susan. And of course, thank you, my loyal listeners, for tuning in each week. Without you, there is no show. And just remember, if you missed any part of today's show, you can always catch the replay on talkradio.nyc, on all your favorite podcasting platforms, and on all the social media, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Twitch, whichever you like to consume your content on. And don't forget, later today at 5 p.m. Eastern Time is Frank Harrison in his show Frank About Health, followed by our dynamic trio with Serving Up Success with a Splash at 6 p.m. Learn about their favorite cocktail this week. Thank you all for tuning in. We will talk to you all next week.